The first thing she said to me that night was not hello. It was not nice to meet you. It was not even thank you for hiring me. It was a whisper against the noise of crystal glasses and shallow laughter. My age isn't a problem, right? Her words cut through the music like a crack in glass, and in that single moment, the glittering ballroom around us felt colder than winter steel. Before this story goes any further, I want to ask you something. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in seeing people beyond the labels the world gives them, take a second right now to like this video, share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this deserve to be heard. I had hired her that afternoon with the detachment of a man who had stopped believing in real connections. The company's annual charity gala was more about image than generosity. My promotion to regional director had come with new expectations. Arrive with someone impressive, smile for photos, look successful. The board members didn't say it directly, but it was understood. A man alone at the top looked either arrogant or pitiful. I was 34 and already tired of pretending. 3 years earlier, my marriage had dissolved quietly like sugar in hot water. No screaming, no scandal, just distance. Long hours at the office had turned into longer silences at home. When she left, she took most of the warmth with her. Since then, I had focused on climbing, on winning contracts, on being too busy to feel the empty apartment waiting for me each night. Hiring an escort felt transactional, simple, no emotions, no expectations. Just a companion who knew how to navigate rooms full of polished lies. When she arrived at my penthouse to get ready before the event, she looked younger than I had expected. Not in an inappropriate way, but in a way that made her seem fragile against the weight of what she was doing. She wore a simple black dress that somehow outshone the designer gowns I knew would be parading through the ballroom. Her posture was straight, professional. Her eyes, though, were uncertain. She told me she was 22, old enough, legal, an adult. She even showed me her ID before I asked, almost defensively, as if she had learned to anticipate suspicion. I nodded, uncomfortable with the formality of it all. It wasn't her age that unsettled me. It was the way she asked about it later, at the party, as if she feared I might suddenly see her as something forbidden or wrong. The ballroom was drenched in gold light. Chandeliers sparkled overhead. A live band played soft jazz that melted into conversation. People laughed too loudly. Deals were whispered behind polite smiles. Cameras flashed like silent lightning. She fit into the scene effortlessly. She laughed at the right moments, asked intelligent questions about the company's philanthropic initiatives, complimented the CEO's wife on her jewelry with perfect restraint. I watched as colleagues who usually ignored me leaned in closer, intrigued by the woman at my side. But between the smiles and the nods, I noticed something else. Whenever someone asked her what she did, there was a flicker in her expression, a half-second hesitation before she offered a vague answer about working freelance in event hosting. It wasn't a lie, exactly, but it wasn't the truth either. And then, near the champagne tower, she leaned closer and whispered those words, "My age isn't a problem, right?" Her voice wasn't seductive. It was scared. I looked at her properly for the first time that night, not at the dress, not at the polished makeup, at her. Beneath the glamour, I saw exhaustion, the kind that doesn't come from a long day but from carrying too much for too long. "Why would it be?" I asked softly. She swallowed, glancing around at the room full of powerful men. "Some clients change their minds. They think I look too young. Or they worry about what people will assume." There it was. Not fear of being underage, fear of being judged, fear of being seen as something shameful. The realization settled heavy in my chest. I had hired her to play a role, but she was the one being scrutinized, evaluated, silently condemned. The rest of the evening blurred into a performance I no longer wanted to be part of. Every compliment thrown in our direction felt hollow. Every handshake felt transactional. I noticed how one executive's gaze lingered on her a little too long, how another joked crudely when he thought I couldn't hear. For the first time in years, ambition felt dirty. When the auction ended and the applause faded, I suggested we leave early. Outside, the night air was sharp and honest. She wrapped her shawl tighter around herself, and the facade she had worn inside began to crumble. In the car, silence stretched between us. Finally, she spoke again. not as an escort fulfilling her duty, but as a young woman who had been holding her breath. All evening, she told me she was studying part-time, that her mother was sick, that tuition and medical bills didn't wait for dreams. She told me she didn't plan to do this forever, that she hated when clients assumed she was naive or broken. "I'm not ashamed of surviving," she said quietly. "I just don't want to be reduced to it." Those words hit harder than anything else she had said. I realized then how easy it had been for me to categorize her. Escort, service, transaction. I had never asked why, never considered the complexity behind the choice. Back at my apartment, she expected the night to follow the unspoken script. But something in me had shifted. The promotion, the gala, the carefully curated image, it all felt trivial compared to the human being standing in my living room, trying to remain composed. I told her she didn't have to stay. Confusion crossed her face. "You already paid, I know." She studied me as if waiting for the catch. There wasn't one. I handed her the envelope we had agreed upon and added more than we had discussed. Not out of pity, but out of respect. "You don't owe me anything," I said. "Not tonight." Her shoulders sagged in relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. She sat down, not as an escort now, but as a tired 22-year-old who hadn't slept properly in weeks. We talked until nearly dawn. She told me about growing up too fast after her father left, about juggling classes and hospital visits, about the shame she felt when relatives whispered about her choices. She told me she was good at math, that she once dreamed of becoming an architect, that she loved sketching buildings in the margins of her notebooks. I found myself telling her things I hadn't told anyone, about my failed marriage, about the loneliness of success, about how climbing the corporate ladder had cost me more than it had given. Somewhere between the city lights flickering outside and the first hint of sunrise, the dynamic between us changed. She wasn't a service. I wasn't a client. We were two people who had been pretending to be stronger than we felt. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not in a romantic fantasy, in a reflective way. She had forced me to confront the emptiness behind my ambition. The company's charity suddenly felt performative compared to the quiet resilience I had witnessed in her. I reached out to her, not to hire her again, but to ask how her exams were going. At first, she was cautious. She had learned that kindness often came with strings attached. But slowly, trust formed. I helped her review financial planning options for her tuition. I connected her with a scholarship program one of our partner foundations sponsored, something I had previously ignored as a mere tax benefit. She resisted at first, proud and independent, but eventually she agreed to apply. Months passed. She reduced her escort work as the scholarship eased her burden. She began interning at a small architectural firm. Every time she talked about blueprints and structural models, her voice carried a light that no ballroom chandelier could replicate. And me? I started changing too. I stopped attending events that required performances. I redirected company resources toward genuine community programs instead of photo opportunities. I confronted colleagues whose jokes crossed lines. Some called me soft. Others said I had lost my edge. Maybe I had. Or maybe I had finally found something sharper than ambition, perspective. One evening, nearly a year after the gala, she invited me to see a student showcase. Her design, a modest community clinic, won first prize. As she stood there, explaining how natural light and open spaces could promote healing, I felt a swell of pride that had nothing to do with ownership or control. She had done this herself. I had only nudged a door open. After the event, she turned to me with tears in her eyes and said she sometimes thought back to that night at the party, how close she had been to giving up, how that single decision, to trust that I wouldn't judge her for her age, her job, her circumstances, had shifted something inside her. But the truth was, she had shifted something inside me first. If this story is touching your heart, if you believe that one act of decency can change two lives at once, please take a moment to like, share, and comment below. Your support helps stories like this reach more people who might need them. Before I tell you how this ends, I want to ask you something special. In the comments, write one word that represents what kindness means to you. Years later, when I look back on that glittering ballroom, I no longer remember the speeches or the deals. I remember a whisper. I remember a young woman asking if her age was a problem, when what she really feared was being dismissed as insignificant. She is 26 now. An architect in her own right. Her mother is recovering. She still sketches in the margins of notebooks, but now those sketches turn into real buildings. We never became a fairy tale romance. That's not what this was. What we became was something steadier, friends, allies, proof that compassion doesn't need to be dramatic to be life-altering. Sometimes people enter your life under labels you don't understand. Escort, executive, failure, success. But beneath those labels are stories waiting to be seen. That night I thought I had hired someone to complete an image. Instead, she dismantled one, and all it took was a whisper in a room full of noise.